All right, welcome everyone back to the Job Box, the podcast where we unpack everyday jobs with the everyday people who work them. Today we have somebody who is an iOS engineer. His name is Eric Schofield, and he's been doing iOS development for 12 years. He's been working at Crumble, you know them, Crumble Cookies, for the past 10 months, focusing on corporate apps that employees use at all the stores. He's an aspiring indie app developer, and his dream is to someday support his family just on the apps that he creates. So, Eric, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here.
Eric and I met each other a few years ago. We were living in the same apartment complex, and then Eric and his family moved in on the same street as me years later, and we've become really good friends since then.
Yeah, it's crazy how that happens. Just a small world.
Yeah, for real. So yeah, we're neighbors. He's like across the street right now as we record this. All right, so Eric, this part of the podcast is called Who Are You and What Do You Do? So tell me, who are you? How did you get here? Yeah, give me some context.
I never thought that I would be doing software engineering at all. You know, like high school me never would have dreamed this. But yeah, it's been fun. We can go as deep into this as you want, but computer science was my fourth major that I declared in college because I just bounced all over the place. And I thought I wanted to, right out of high school, I was like, oh, I'll do English because I liked to write. But then I pretty quickly was like, no, I don't want to be a teacher, which is basically all that I would have done unless I somehow became huge writing something, which hasn't happened. But so I was like, okay, well, no, I don't want to do that. I guess I'll do microbiology because that was really interesting to me and do pre-med.
Oh, wow.
So very, very different. And that one I didn't go very far in that either because everybody else was just so excited about studying for the MCAT and just loved school and homework. And I was like, this is not for me. I am not. Like, I'm like, you know what? If I get like B's and C's, like, I don't really care that much. I just want to like learn and was not about the school life. So after that, I was like, well, I'll just do law school then, which wasn't that different, as far as the academic like stuff goes, because that still would have taken me, 8 years or whatever. And so I was doing political science for that, and I got pretty far in that. I did like 2.5 years of that, if I'm remembering correctly. And yeah, I just was like, well, I don't want to do law school anymore. I can't remember exactly why. I think I had just talked to a few people who were attorneys and they were like, yeah, I don't know. This isn't like if I was me, I probably wouldn't do it. So I talked to enough people that I was like, okay, maybe this isn't what I want to do.
So you were first an English major,
Yeah.
then you switched to microbiology,
Yep.
and then you went to political science.
Yes, yeah. So like I'm just like all over the place.
Wow. Yeah, that's a wide range of majors. But
Yeah.
like it sounds like you were at least somewhat interested in all of them.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, and I still, am interested in all of those things, on some level.
Hmm.
I just wasn't interested enough to make it a career. And like at this point, I felt like I was like, man, I have done everything. Like I had taken like a bunch of other different like intro classes. Like I did like a linguistics class, and like I took a semester of Chinese, and like just all these different things that I was like, I'm gonna try whatever. And I was like, all right, I'm done. I don't know if I want to do anything anymore. And my sister actually was like, oh, you should take a computer science class. And I was like, well, what do I have to lose? I feel like I've tried everything else. But like pretty immediately, I really, really liked it because it was this really like the sweet spot for me of being really logical, which I really liked, but then also creative, where I felt like I was using both sides of my brain enough that I was engaging in both those ways for me. And yeah, and so I luckily they let me switch my major. I convinced them because I was like, well, if I'm going to do political science and I don't do law school, there's not really much of a point to that because no one's hiring political scientists. So not very many job descriptions out there for that. And luckily they let me switch, and yeah, it's been awesome. I've loved it since then. So it took me forever to get through school, but I finally did. And I actually kind of learned iOS development on my own during school, and then just immediately been doing that ever since. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
It's a
At what point did you realize that it was a career that could let you use both sides of your brain?
like very, very early on, like within a month, probably within a couple weeks of that first class that I took, because it became pretty clear to me. I had like heard other people that would talk about it, and I hear like, oh, salaries are pretty good, but the same thing's true about like attorneys and doctors, but I liked it enough that I was like, oh, I could see myself actually doing this long term. And like at first it was just like, okay, I think so. And as the semester went on, I really was like, oh yeah, for sure. Like the further in I got, which still like I know it's not very far in. It's not like I knew hardly anything
Hmm.
about software engineering at all. But after a couple months, I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to switch my major to. I can like, and then I was like, this is the last chance I get. If I don't do this, I guess I just drop out or who knows. But yeah.
So was there like a specific project that made you feel like, oh yeah, this is definitely for me?
Man, the one that really stands out to me, which is pretty silly, was like a Plinko project that we made. It was in a like a little terminal window. So it was like very, very basic. It was just text
Hmm.
based. Like Plinko, like from like the Price is Right, where you drop a like a token, I guess I don't know what it is, but you drop a
Yeah,
thing and it goes back and forth down the thing and you get so
yeah,
many
the little
points
disc.
depending on where it lands or whatever. And yeah, so like seeing that and then every second it would like update and you would like see its position. It was very, very basic, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the worst I'm gonna ever be at this. And I just thought it was so cool and like would show people like, oh, I made this like silly little like totally useless thing, but yeah, it was awesome. And I just was like, oh, how do I make something actually useful? And yeah, it was awesome. And that's a big part of why I wanted to do iOS development because I really liked that idea of like making something and then it's like, oh, this is on my phone right here. I can go show it to you. I can carry it in my pocket. Like that idea was just awesome to me. And I had been an Apple fanboy for a long time. And, like I had like the original iPhone in high school and like, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, you're aging yourself here.
Yeah, I didn't know, for real. But no, yeah, so it was just the perfect fit. And I've really, really enjoyed it. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
see how
Okay,
long that
so
lasts before AI takes my job.
we'll get to that. I want to know a little bit more about that, um, but so that's where you began in this career, and now there you are developing this Plinko game, and now here you are at Crumble years later, and you're developing apps, software, websites. I'm assuming.
I don't do very much web stuff. I'm not a huge fan of that side
Hmm.
of things, but if I have to,
Okay.
AI makes it a lot easier that I can do that. But yeah, I like him almost exclusively in iOS.
Okay, cool. So, how did you get to where you're at now? Because how many jobs did you go through until you were here?
Yeah, so my first actual iOS job was basically just I hesitate to even call it an internship because I was still in school and I had done summer sales for a few years for a pest control company, and they actually let me work part-time during the school year, and I knew basically nothing, but they were so nice to let me do that. And I learned just a huge amount from the people that were there. And I'm reading books and watching videos and doing any online courses that I can find for iOS development specifically, and that was really what jump started it. But then I was like, "Ugh, I need like a more formal, maybe more or less comprehensive experience for this where because I was like, oh, like they're telling me to do this random one-off thing, but just having something more cohesive and comprehensive. And so I actually went to San Francisco for a summer and for 3 months and did a boot camp, a full-time boot camp for 3 months. And after I came back from that, I went back to that same company and then I was working pretty much full time at that point. And, I was obviously still the very, below even, that I felt at that point it was basically an internship. And I did that for a while. I did a couple other internships. After that, I did that for what, like 2 years or something. And then I did a couple more internships, still during school and, at ESPN. And I went to Google. I did an internship there. And then after I graduated. Yeah, this is my third job after graduating, third place I've been. So
Awesome. How did you find out about?
the current job at Crumble,
Mm-hmm.
I have two friends that work there and have just raved about it. And one of them's been there for gosh, 5 years probably at this point, and the other one two, I think maybe three, and they just have loved it. And at my first job out of college, I worked with both of them, and one of them went to Podium, or he was at Podium, and then one went to Crumble, and one went to another job, and then to Crumble. And at that job, it was really funny because we would always look at the Crumble app and be like, "Oh man, this is what we want our app to be like. It's so nice. It looks so
Cool.
good." And so we would, had it on this shining pedestal where we were always looking at it. And then one of us went to Crumble and we were like, "Oh man, that's the dream. That's awesome."
Yeah.
And he was doing other stuff, and he actually ended up doing like robotic stuff at Crumble, which is crazy and cool. But
Wow.
then my other coworker, he went to Crumble doing iOS, and then just last summer he reached out and was like, "Hey, we have an opening if you want to come check it out." And so I was like, "You know what? Let's do it." Like, this opportunity doesn't come around all the times. I went and met the team and interviewed and loved, was just really stoked about it. And yeah, here I am 10 months later, and it's been great.
So how many, like, do you get a lot of their cookies?
Yes,
Do you eat a
for
lot of
better or
cookies now?
worse. I probably eat too many of them, but it's because they have bakers on site, obviously, because they're doing a lot of R&D and even just like marketing and all the videos and photo shoots that they do. It's all done there on site. So they'll randomly just be like, "Oh, we have a bunch of extra of this cookie or this or tray of cheesecakes," and there's this mad rush that people to run and go grab one before they're gone. And like it happens maybe not every day I'm in the office, but pretty close to it. And there are some days where it's like 3 or 4 times, and I come home with a box of just random different cookies. So yeah, it's a fun perk, an unexpected, unique perk, but it's fun.
I'm sure your family loves when you bring home cookies. I know I would. I mean, I would have some cookies.
I need to be dropping them off to you guys then sometimes, so we don't get so
I
fat
mean,
from eating cookies all the time.
I didn't mean to like invite myself into your reign of cookies, but
Hey, you're
I'll
welcome.
gladly take them off your hands if you're getting rid of them.
Hey, I'll bring you some tomorrow.
Nice. Moving on to this next section, I called this section the good, the bad, and the break room.
Nice.
Yeah, kind of dumb, but give me the layout. What's the good about this industry, the bad, and the break room? What are, like, when I say break room, what I mean is like the culture. And like, do you get like a pretty good work-life balance? Do you get like paid time off, like across the industry and also at your current job? What's the good, the bad, and the break room?
Would say most things are pretty good. Like work-life balance is usually great. I think where it gets, and it really just depends on the person, because like for me, where it would fall into that more bad category would be in like a really ambitious new startup. Maybe 10 years ago, I would have loved it. It would have been awesome to, be sleeping at my office, basically. That's the joke. But I like literally some companies have done that. Like I've met people who were at like Apple in the early days or
Hmm.
Facebook in the early days, and they literally were just sleeping in their office when they had like crazy deadlines that they were trying to hit, and they'd have a crazy week or whatever. So I've never experienced anything like that. Definitely some crazy weeks where maybe I worked 60 hours or 80 hours or something crazy like that, but that was very much an abnormality for me. I think most people probably would say the same thing. And the by and large, the pay is really great. I've never been able to complain about that. And some places have unlimited PTO. At Crumble, we don't have unlimited, but I still feel like it's pretty generous. 3 weeks off, basically 15 days plus a bunch of different holidays, and we get like a 2-week Christmas break. And well, then one of the best perks I think is going to start here in a few weeks, where we get Fridays off all summer, and
That's
that's
awesome.
that's going to be awesome. That's a very, very unique one. And that's not just for tech, that's everybody at Crumble HQ. So that's really, really cool. Like I said earlier, the thing that really brought me into this was the being able to use both sides of my brain. So I think that's a really big pro that even still today, like even though I'm not the one designing our apps, I still get a lot of input into that, and I work with our designers, and we'll go back and forth on things sometimes. When we're really trying to figure out, is this the best way to do something, or and sometimes it's really little small changes, and sometimes it's bigger. It depends on the situation, of course. But I really, really like that side that I get to be able to do both those things. That I'm logical, get to think and use my puzzle. It feels like a puzzle to me, but then I also get to be creative, and I'm thinking about the visuals. And that's something that's really unique with iOS, I would say, because like if you're doing just web development, you're pretty much only doing that creative UI side. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing back end development, you're not doing any UI. So it's there's still an element of creativity because you're coming up with things, and it trickles into other areas, but it's a lot more of the analytical, logical side. And so I really like that happy medium for me. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what the bad would be.
As an iOS engineer, what is your day to day like?
Yeah, that has changed so much in the last year with AI. It's pretty
Really?
crazy.
It's
Oh
changed it that
yeah.
much?
Wait, well, honestly, the last 6 months for me is where it
What?
changed the most. Yeah, there was a big inflection point in like December, January. Like before, say 5 years ago, if there was something I wasn't sure how to do or needed some help on something, of course, I could ask a coworker, but 9 times out of 10, I would go Google search and I'd end up on a forum somewhere, or Stack Overflow is the thing where, where software engineers ask questions, and somebody will have had the same question as me a year or two ago, or 10 years ago even, and somebody will have made this great answer. And so it's been really, really
Mhm.
helpful. But then like a year or two ago, that kind of started to shift with ChatGPT and other things coming out, where you would then ask that instead of going to Google or whatever. And so that was becoming more and more a thing. I was probably 50-50 for a lot of the time. But then I started trying to use AI more consistently to actually write the code, probably about when I came to Crumble. And I did before at my last job a little bit, but it was, at least with iOS development, it wasn't very good. Like you would do something and I would just always end up going in and fixing a lot of it, and it would be like
Mm-hmm.
way off the rails. But back in, yeah, like mid-December, January, that time frame, it just had a massive leap where to now, most days I probably don't even write the code, like any of it. I'm just
Wow.
prompting, and I'll look at it and have it refine it. But it's just so much faster to
Mm-hmm.
use AI than for me to actually go in and type it out, that
So you still
it's
have to like you still have to know the basics, and you have to know how code works in general, just so that you can make sure that it's doing it right.
yeah, it's so tough because there are some things where I don't really have a lot of knowledge, especially being still relatively new at Crumble. If I, have like one of the projects we're working on is preparing for Crumble to expand into Mexico. And so we have a lot of stuff that we have to go through and test literally everything to make sure that it works with, because we have to spin up an entire new system for Mexico
Oh, wow.
beyond just the language translations. It's just like, okay, well, do all these different systems work? Can you make an order, with all these different parameters and different configurations and stuff like that? So that has been really helpful, where I can just go into AI and prompt it to help it, or to have it help me through that, because I don't know, there's hundreds of, probably millions of lines of code, and I can't know, hardly any of it. And to have it be able to search through all of it and give me back a human readable thing
Hmm.
to say, oh, well, do this, and here are some step-by-step instructions, like that's really, really helpful. But then, yeah, even just going like the day to day, I'll just say, here's what I want to accomplish, do this. So it's interesting that sometimes I find myself not really knowing what I'm doing, but then I rely on other people on my team to make sure that any change that I made is, good,
Hmm.
basically.
Yeah.
But where I do have more domain knowledge and expertise, it's very, very helpful to have that background because it's really easy for AI to make decisions it thinks are good and for it to not be as good. And it's getting better all the time, obviously, but I still think it's really, really important to have foundation of an engineering background so that you can look at the code. And some people will just be like, oh, here, go, here's my prompt, try and one shot it or just completely vibe code it
Yeah.
and you get very mixed results. And that's where you have issues with like bad security practices. But even there'll be times where you just have weird bugs visually and you can't, you don't know why because you didn't write it. And that can be hard to track down. And anyway, yeah, it's a very mixed bag a lot of times. And I would say if you want to actually have a career in it, you can start in it without having very much knowledge. And I think that is a really, really cool thing that it lowers the barrier to entry. But to get really far, you would definitely want to have a deeper understanding of it. And maybe that changes next month, I don't know. But
Yeah.
for now, I
It's
think
always
I think
evolving.
I do think that that will continue to be the case. And I don't think that AI will completely replace humans in the loop because there's still like an AI just doesn't have human experience and it can say, oh, well, I've seen all these other examples and I can analyze, different best practices and what people say they like. But there's just a difference between a computer saying, oh, I think this looks good visually, and you actually looking at it and be like, oh, no, this is terrible or this is great. And knowing what it feels like. And, it's, yeah, just that human element, the taste is so important still. So hopefully, at least for my lifetime, it doesn't go away or I'm going to end up being a farmer or something.
You mentioned that you were using like ChatGPT for things, and I know that there's a lot of other models out there. Like, I think that some of the main ones that I'm familiar with are, of course, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. What are some other models that you've used, and would you recommend them for someone entering this job market?
Like, yeah, at first it was like ChatGPT is the one I know. I guess that's the one I'll use. And then I start hearing people using Claude that are getting fantastic results. And I'm like, maybe I should start trying to use that. And that is what I started using in, yeah, like November, December last year. And it just was like this light bulb moment that I just loved it. And it was incredible. So I've used Claude a lot. And I'd used Gemini and other things as well. But Claude and ChatGPT or Codex specifically are the best right now, at least. And so that's the hard part is that one week Claude will be the great one. And then OpenAI will release a new thing, update for ChatGPT, and then that is the better one. And then a week later, Claude is the better thing. So like that can be hard where they're similar enough that it's not crazy hard to go back and forth, but they're different enough that I feel like whenever I do that, I kind of have a couple of days where I'm like relearning it almost. But I,
Yeah.
yeah, so those are the main two that I use now is Claude Code and
Meta AI? Just
Codex.
kidding.
Yeah, no, that's not my thing. Like, I think it's really fascinating and cool that we can make these like the videos and images that come out of AI tools now are so convincing now. But I also a little part of me hurts that I don't want that to be what everything is, where
Yeah.
you just pull up Netflix and you're like, oh, make a new Star Wars movie for me, and it just like
Yeah.
generates one. Like that feels like a really soulless, sad place for stuff to end up. So I hope that that's
Yeah.
human made stuff doesn't go away because that I think creativity is just it's so fun and important. So
Yeah. And people resonate a lot when they can see like an actor portraying a character, and and then they see that same actor interviewed about playing that character, and like there's
right.
just a whole, yeah, there's a whole like ecosystem that is involved with like creativity and like the process of art. And so I think that goes for these, even these digital elements that you're talking about, like yeah, you're using AI as a tool, but there's a lot of humanity, your own personal humanity and your taste that you're putting
Hmm.
into it to make it your own and something that other people can use and resonate with. So that's really cool. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about like the maybe some bad aspects or just like the break room of the industry?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are definitely that there are definitely some areas that are more prone to being bad you just have to be careful, I think, of, you've got to set your own boundaries, and especially if you go to any of the like big Silicon Valley companies, like a Meta or Netflix, or any of the like FANG companies, I guess they used to be called. So like, yeah, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, all any of like Apple, the big ones, they have kind of a reputation where you are like they pay really well, but a lot of people will just work a lot. And you don't have to, but people just kind of feel that pressure. So I think that can be one where if you're not careful, you can pretty easily get sucked into that mentality, especially at one of those companies where like, they would provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can easily be there for 12 hours a day. And you can do your laundry there, you can shower there, like, you could basically live there. And so I think that could be an area where you would want to be careful. But I I've never experienced that. I think that is also slowing down more because people realize that's not super sustainable, and people are valuing work-life balance a lot more. I think that probably started happening with COVID, where people started realizing, oh, I need to get outside and see people and have a social life, where we were not allowed to have that basically for like a long time. So I think people value that a lot more, which is good.
Yeah.
Right now, really the worst part about the industry, I would say, is finding a job. I know several people who have been out of a job for months, and it's just,
Mm.
people who are fantastic and have 10, 15 years of experience and are still just having a hard time. It's with AI that is definitely changing the landscape. I know several companies, even the last month or two, have laid off big portions of their workforce, citing AI as the reason that they can be a
Wow.
lot more efficient, so they don't need as much of a head count. And it's still pretty early on in those days, so those are kind of experiments, and so we'll see what ends up happening, if that's a good move. Or a lot of people think that's not going to be as good of a move long term, but yeah, it's definitely not as, even 5 years ago, it was basically just, oh, if you did software engineering, you're going to easily have a job and it's going to pay great and you're going to be fine. But AI has definitely changed that. And so, yeah, that's probably where I would say is the scariest aspect right now. But yeah, as far as like actually like the day-to-day work, I really enjoy it. I think it's something that you need to enjoy, just like any career, but at the end of the day, it's a job. So hopefully it's not your entire life isn't wrapped up in where you work or the specifics of what you do every day, because yeah, it might change.
Yeah, and your job is going to be where you spend a good chunk of your lifetime. And
Oh,
so, yeah, it's got to be something that you at least have some affinity for, like that you want to learn something there, or or you think it's amusing in some way, or
totally.
something
Yeah.
where you can find happiness.
Right. Where you're contributing to something that, or you enjoy it, or there's got to be some element of that. Yeah. That you feel like you're bettering yourself, learning things, like absolutely. Yeah. It would be, and that's like, yeah, that's why, at the beginning of my middle, most of it of college, where I was feeling that dissonance of like, yeah, I know people do well in this industry, but yeah, I definitely know this isn't for me. And so yeah, I think yeah, that's definitely important. And I feel very, very fortunate that what resonates with me is something that does pay pretty well typically. But for me, I think it was a lot more important that I found something that I would enjoy. Because if I just dreaded going to my job every day, I don't know how I would last doing that. And I would much rather do something making less money that I enjoy, you know. I don't dread it, which is good.
Yeah, yeah, it's got to be something that's like sustainable, that can pay the bills, so to speak, and help you live the quality of life that you would like. And if you can do that and you enjoy it, then you're set. You're good. But speaking of pay, let's get into the next section, which I call the bacon.
Nice.
So,
Cha-ching.
yeah, tell me what the starting pay is like to a more experienced pay and all the levels in between, and then talk to me. You already talked a little bit about job security, but I also want to go through that as well. Let's start with pay though.
Sure. Yeah. I Man, I don't know super specifics on everything in the industry, but I remember in college, in that first class that I took, my professor, he would tell us like, "Oh, your first job out of college, you should be making, $75,000 a year." And at the time, I was just like, "Man, that's crazy. I could live anywhere. I could buy anything I want." And when I'm making $10 an hour or whatever job I had on campus. I think now I would guess it's probably in the range of around 100,000 to start out with. And that does depend on where you are. If you're in Wyoming, that might be quite a bit lower. Even, gosh, 7 years ago when I was doing my last internship that I did at Google, they started at, I want to say, the total compensation is what they call it, where it's salary plus they gave you stock options, which, the bigger public companies will do that. It was like 175, I think. And that felt like, man, that's crazy. But when you actually look at things like the cost of living and all of that, it was not as much as it sounded like. And that I think is changing even in Utah. Utah's a lot more expensive than it used to be. And so, but I think 100,000 is probably a pretty decent expectation of that as the starting point. And then it can go up to crazy high numbers. There were, I knew people that were have been making $500,000, which is mind blowing to me. Basically, the progression is like a junior engineer, mid-level, senior, and then after that, some companies have it and some don't. But you'll have like an architect or a principal engineer, what they call them. So at a senior level, I would say that's probably, it has a big range of anywhere from 150 to probably $250,000 a year salary, and that'll fluctuate. That'll depend. If you have unlimited PTO, or if you have less, or if you have a lot of stock options or no stock options, or whatever different packages the companies come up with. But I would say that's probably pretty standard ranges.
Yeah, that's great to know, especially for someone who's like contemplating, oh, do I want to get into this? From the work-life balance to the starting salary, those are some things to consider.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's not quite as easy to, like it used to be that I knew a lot of people who would just do like have had no background whatsoever in software engineering. And, like I literally knew a few people at my first job that had been teachers before, teaching like totally unrelated things like biology, middle school biology or something like that. And then decide, I want to do software engineering. And they'd go do a boot camp for 12 weeks during the summer. And after that, they got a job, full-time job doing web development or whatever, making $100,000 and, doubling their salary from what they were as a teacher.
So how is like the job security across the board though? Like you talked a little bit about that, where companies have laid off so many people because they think AI is a sustainable option that can keep up the workload.
I mean, you never really, really know, how secure your job is, I guess, unless you're at a government job, because those are a lot harder to get fired from a job like that unless you really do something bad. But in the private sector, I feel like you never, one day you could be doing great, and then the next day you find out, oh, I didn't realize that, we had been having a down year in sales, or, they sold the company and now they laid everybody off. Like, crazy stuff can happen. But in general, I would say job security is still pretty good. It's not something that I worry about daily, that, oh, I might not have a job next week. And I still feel confident that if I did lose my job, I would be able to find one. It might take me months, but I would be able to find one still. But I'll be honest, that is a big part of why that it's always been something that I've been interested in doing, indie app development, but that's been more and more on my mind with AI, just because I think that it sounds good to a lot of executives, that they think, oh, well, we can get rid of, like, what was it? I think it might have been Coinbase even, that was saying like, oh, we've had like, non-engineers contributing production code to our code base. And like people see that and are like, oh yeah, we can have accountants that are pushing code to our software, or executives and
Interesting.
designers, and like, yeah, you could, and you're gonna have varying degrees of success for that, but like you're gonna start seeing issues, I think, from that happening. To me, it feels like I think people way overestimate, currently at least, how good AI is. Because you'll have one experience where it one shots something and it just blows your mind, and you're like, the sky is the limit. This is amazing. It's unstoppable. But I feel like the same thing could be said with almost any application of AI, where like a year ago, wasn't it? Or something like that, when everybody was doing the Studio Ghibli versions of their profile
Yeah.
pictures from ChatGPT. Super, super fun application of it, but in some ways, but that's such a limited scope. If you were like, oh, I'm gonna go actually try and make something with AI, like you go in and you prompt it and you're like, oh man, this actually kind of isn't as good. You have to have a reference like that, like actual people who did the work, like a director who's made successful movies would be infinitely more productive at doing something like that than I would, or even someone who writes scripts or anything, like anyone who's actually involved in that process would be so much better than I. I'm not gonna go, vibe code, vibe video, whatever you want to call it, the next $1 billion movie. Like that's just not gonna happen. And I think that the same idea does
Yeah.
apply to software engineering, at
Yeah,
least.
with whatever industry that you're in, you need to
Yeah.
have the vocabulary to speak about it and to prompt AI in order to get the output that you want.
Right. And you need to be able to see, there are subtleties where you can see things where you're like, something's a little off with that. And if you're just like, hey, I can tell something's off, but I don't know what's off with it, or I don't know what needs to be fixed, that's where you start getting hung up. And it's interesting. We did a hackathon actually, like couple months ago, month ago, 2 months ago.
Hackathon.
Yeah, at Crumble, and it was open to everybody, and it was an AI focused one, and there was several people, several teams that had no engineers on their team, and like one of them that did pretty well with his, he made actually won it. He did he vibe coded a thing, and it looked pretty impressive. But then afterwards, we were talking to him, and he was like, I have no idea how to get it working again, like how to like get it running today, or and then we go look at the code and it's like he has just all these security issues with it, and like of course he just threw it
Okay, hold
together in
on.
like a week.
But
But
back up though. What is a hackathon?
so hackathon is basically, the idea is that it's they kind of mix together hack and marathon. So it's a marathon, a week or a few days where you are doing something completely, or not necessarily completely, but just different than your day-to-day work, where you come up with an idea. And in this case, we were trying to use AI in different ways to make any part of the business at Crumble more efficient. And that it could have been as simple as like, oh, I'm an accountant, I want to use AI to make my accounting processes faster, more efficient. Or my team, we did a project to help franchise owners find opportunities in their community to participate in their community more than just their brick and mortar store.
When you said hackathon, I was thinking like, okay, so are you like trying to like infiltrate your own company to see
Oh,
what information you can get?
yeah,
And
it's an interesting term because, yeah, hacking, you think of that as being like hacking into something, right?
yeah,
Like as a hacker, but yeah, I don't know why that's kind of been synonymous with just general programming. He used it in an even more general term where it was like, yeah, you might not even do anything code related. You might just find a tool that like helped you be more productive, or in some way.
gotcha. So it's more like life hacks for your company.
Basically, yeah, yeah.
Okay. That's a really cool piece of the culture where like, someone outside of the software development industry, yeah, wouldn't really know that was a thing. The next section of the podcast is called Note to Self. This is the part where you put yourself back in the shoes of Eric Schofield, the high schooler, and give him a little bit of advice. Like, if you had any advice for your past self, what would it be?
You always think, oh, I could have done this thing so much better with what I know now. But also, I wouldn't change what happened because that's made me who I am. Even simple things. Like I would have loved to have gotten through college way faster and not had to, waste my time on doing English or political science or whatever. But at the same time, that's like that made me who I am, at some level. And so I'm grateful for it, even though it took so much longer. But I think a piece of advice that I would give myself is, yeah, just I think take risks. I think I do a decent job at this, but I try to not do things out of fear, whether that's avoiding something because I'm scared of what may or may not happen, or doing something because I'm scared of what may or may not happen. I don't like acting based on fear, and I still do, I think everybody does. It's not completely avoidable. But the worst thing that can happen is you fail at it and then you learn something like, oh yeah, it turns out English isn't for me. Or it turns out political science is not my thing. Like I learned super cool things and I met cool people and now I'm where I am today and maybe it would have happened the same way sooner. I don't know. But yeah, take the risk, do something, especially before having a family and people who rely on me and depend on me. Like something that I would have really, really loved to do would have been to be like a digital nomad for a bit, like just go backpack through Europe and work or not work even,
Yeah.
but like something like that would have been really, really cool, I think. And maybe someday I'll do it anyway. We'll pack up the kids and we'll just go do a summer in Europe or, who knows. But yeah, I think if there's something that you want to do, if you want to do an internship, you want to do a study abroad, like just do it, even if other people aren't doing it or people are telling you that's not what you're supposed to do. Like that is something that I think I am good at is not caring what other people think about a lot of my decisions. I remember there was a time when after I'd been doing computer science for like a year and I had that first job where I was doing iOS development and I had, learned so and I was just like, I'm learning so much more practical stuff at work than I am at school. And this is still going to take me like 2 more years or 3 more years. And I was like, I'm just going to drop out because I'm already making okay money and I can make more. It's, whatever. And I sat down with my parents and I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to drop out. And I thought my parents were going to just be like, that's the dumbest decision you could ever make. Like, don't do it. Both my parents have master's degrees. And I'll never forget my mom's response that she was like, well, you're not running away from school. You're going towards something. So like, I think that's fine. And I just was like, that's cool. I like that. And
That's
I
awesome.
did. I fully was like, well, I'm not going to fully drop out. I'll take like one class at a time. So I did
Hmm.
that for a while. And then what got me back to school was one of my internships told me that they would have given me an offer, a full-time offer, if I was graduating sooner. And so I was like, well, all right, I was kind of been on the fence about it anyway. Maybe I'll just go back and do it. And one of the things that I told myself is that if I'm going to go back and do it, I'm going to do things that I would not be able to do otherwise. And like I worked with a professor for like 2 years and did stuff like I did some research with him and made some cool, crazy stuff and entered competitions. And, like I think doing that kind of stuff, like take advantage of the opportunities you have. You don't want to regret not taking those chances. So anyway,
I
long-winded
love
answer, but
that.
that's what I would say.
No, I love that. I really love that idea of taking risks because that's the only way you really learn is to get outside of your comfort zone and do something that is kind of off the beaten path, pave your own path to some degree, learn from others who have also paved their own path, but and take things from them, but like to just go and try new things. Like, I love that, because some people I think might take, you going through four different majors is like, oh, well, I failed at that major and that major and that major. So, and then I finally succeeded at that one. But no, the way that you're looking at it is I learned so much from each chapter in my education. And now I have people that I met and I have new skill sets and new knowledge and I can use those things now in my career and I just have so much more because of it.
And it's so much easier, hindsight is 2020 because in the moment I very much felt like a failure that I was like everybody else here knows exactly what they want to do and they're so excited about getting into the field and making a big impact and I don't know what I want to do. I'm 24, 25 years old and I'm taking classes with freshmen. Like I felt ridiculous constantly and that was super frustrating all the time. Yeah, looking back on it, yeah, I am grateful that I had those different, it's a unique path, and yeah, I think it does make me a little more well-rounded in some areas, some ways, and maybe that's just me trying to be optimistic and paint it in a better light. But no, yeah, I'm grateful for it, and I think everybody's journey is going to be different. There are some people who know at 5 years old that they want to be, what they want to be, and they stick with it forever, and they're fantastic at it, and they love it. That's awesome. I don't think most people are like that. I've met too many people who just followed the system. And then later on, they're just like, oh, I hate this. Like, I don't, why am I doing this? Like, I wish I did it. And now you're stuck because you're like, oh, I have 3 kids and a house and all these responsibilities. I can't just start over again, And I mean, some people still do, and, you know, and you can figure it out, but it's a lot harder to do that when you get more responsibilities. And there's always something valuable that can come, or you meet people that are expand your worldview, or just you make friends. Like, yeah, there's always something beneficial out of it.
Yeah, totally. So like for people who are kind of like starting where you started, do you
Which
think like
time?
yeah, okay. Who are considering going into software development, where do you think they should start? Like, should they start? Like, is it worth pursuing a traditional education? Should they start by learning AI? Like, what do they do?
Yeah, I think, I hate this answer, but it's so true. It depends, because I th I don't think that that traditional education is pointless, but I also don't think that it is the silver bullet that it used to be, where, like for our parents, where it was like, oh yeah, you have to do this. You're not going to be able to find a job if you don't. I don't think that's as true today, especially if you want to do software engineering, because access to information has never been more available. And I would say, if you like, the best way for most people to learn is, especially in this domain, is to learn some basics. And there are so many places you can do that. You can start using AI and ask it to teach you. I prefer more structured things, maybe someone who's made a course online or something, and there are so many options available. So maybe you do that, spend, some nights and weekends doing that for a few weeks or a month or something, just so you have some amount of a foundation. But I would really say where you learn the most is having something that you want to make. And it can be as simple or as crazy you want. If you want to just make a to-do list that's exactly how you want it to be, do it. Even if you don't ship it and make millions of dollars off of it, like, even if you're the only one who ever uses it, great. That could still be awesome. I have a friend actually who, like, what was this, 2 years ago, I think? She was a designer, and she just out of the blue was like, you know what? I want to learn how to make apps. So she quit her job. She was making good money out. She was living in the Bay Area, and picked up and moved out to Utah. I think she has family here, and decided, she said, I'm going to take a year off and just learn programming, learn iOS app development. And she made this app. It's called Doodle, and she was nominated for a design award for Apple. First app she ever made. And
Wow,
she had no idea what she was doing,
that's
like,
crazy.
to start
That's
with.
so cool.
And I think it was the coolest thing to me to see her do that, because she just had the drive and she just made it happen. And it's such a simple, silly idea, but people love it. Like, it's one of those things where you see it and you're like, oh, why did nobody make this before? This seems so obvious. Well, basically what the premise was is just it's a random shape that you get. Everybody gets this, kind of like a Wordle thing where everybody
Hmm.
has the same shape, and you're supposed to just draw on it and make it whatever you want. And it's so cool. And like, it's just an awesome, awesome idea. So like, anyway, all that to say that I think making something that you want to see in the world is the best way to learn, because like, that's what she was constantly like, oh, how do I do this thing? How do I do that? How do I, she's searching on her own, and she's asking people, and that's where you're going to learn, because you care about it, rather than somebody telling you that you should care about it. You care about it for your own intrinsic internal reasons. And that's where I learn the most. I think most people do. If whether that's with this, or you want to make the world's best pizza, great, like, go figure it out, learn it because you want to have great pizza. I think that's the best way to learn.
Yeah,
That's what I'd
I
say.
I love that. Like, I think that some of the most successful people that I've met are the most curious people too. Like, they have questions about life and how they can improve something about their own life or someone else's life, or they just want to put good in the world and they're thinking about, oh, how can I do that? Or like, I want to get to know these people, and because they have the skill set that I've been wanting to learn forever, and I think that that's how you meet a really great network of people, is learning about them, being curious. And it's also how you learn anything, really. The more curious you are, the more intrigued you'll be when someone gives you an answer, and regardless of what the answer is, and then you can dive a little deeper and learn more about it. And anyway, I just think it's so cool when people use their curiosity to their advantage and make something amazing.
Oh yeah, and I honestly, maybe this is the real advice I should give myself, my younger self, is to not. I mean, it's similar to what I said earlier about not caring about what people think, but I think more specifically, don't be afraid to ask questions. I think in our society, it's so easy to feel like, oh, I should know this already. I can't. I don't want to be the one to ask because then everybody will find out I'm a fraud. And I think this exists in any field of work, but it's often talked about in software engineering, the imposter syndrome, where you feel like you see everybody else just doing amazing things, and they're using AI incredibly, or they know the ins and outs of this specific thing. And I just feel like, I don't know, I'm just flying by the seat of my pants sometimes. And the truth is pretty much everybody feels like that. And you know things that they don't, and they know things that you don't. And that's good. That's just how the world works. And I think that is, yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions. Like you were talking about, being curious is such an advantage if you don't let your or if you are curious and not, don't let yourself feel curious and not naive. Because if you just are like trying to hide from being naive, you'll never learn, and you'll never expand your horizons. But being curious, I think that is where you're just like, I don't care if I don't know. I just want to learn this. And like some of my best experiences with that have been times where I feel like, man, this is a stupid question, or this, like, I should know this is a silly thing that I'm asking, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. And then turns out tons of other people have the same question in the room, or the person that I asked is like, oh yeah, I just learned this out like a week ago. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not an idiot, like as much as I thought I was. Like it's yeah. Anyway, I think most people are way more understanding, and no one's as, I don't know. I hope at least most people aren't gonna like make fun of you for not knowing that. And it's just like, who cares if you've never done this thing before? Just go learn it. Like, and I think most people think it's awesome. Like if you hear of some 80-year-old person learning how to do something new, I think that's always so cool,
Yeah.
because like they just don't let
They're
it stop
breaking the
themselves.
stereotype. You
Yeah.
can't teach an old dog new tricks, right?
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And anyway, yeah, I think, yeah, I like what you were talking about, being curious. I think it can be such a superpower.
Yeah, there's a quote that gets passed around in the ad industry all the time. The quote comes from Dan Wyden, who is like the founder of one of the most well-known ad agencies, Wyden and Kennedy. Anyway, he said, "Walk in stupid every morning." Basically, just saying like, like embrace that you're not the smartest person in the room, and there's something you can learn from everyone. And when you ask questions, then it fosters your creativity, and you can then make better work than you would have been able to make otherwise. So yeah, walk in stupid every morning.
I will. Walk in stupid, I'll probably leave stupid too. So,
Well, cool. Moving on to this final section, I call it your future. It's called your future commute, and I want to get into like, what is your future commute? What is the next thing for you? Your goals, your aspirations, and here you are on your future commute.
sounds like I'm in a race car or something. That's
Yeah,
Or a
yeah.
motorcycle. Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, it could be, if that's your dream to ride to Crumble on a motorcycle, then there you are.
Yeah, maybe not a motorcycle, but I got to take my advice here a little bit, because I think, I've been saying it for so long. I made this goal this year. I really want to be an indie developer, a bona fide indie developer. Eventually, it would be amazing to have that replace my income from a job. But I, and to me, it's not even necessarily about making money. If I find it so cool when people are able to make useful or fun things that other people use and enjoy. It's like just them or a small team. It doesn't have to be, a massive thing. And I think the same thing is true. I love movies, and I think it's such a cool thing. Indie films are so fun for that reason, with a small budget and a small team. And like you can't do certain things, obviously, with those constraints, but those constraints also push you to do things that you wouldn't think are possible. And so I want to do that. And so this year I set a goal that I want to release 5 apps on the App Store. Doesn't matter what they are. I haven't released any yet, but I've worked on like 3. So
Okay, that's
um,
sweet. That's
I just need to get them out, and because it's always a thing that I feel like that's not good enough, or like, am I going to be embarrassed that this is like such a small, silly thing, or like, are people even going to want this? And haven't released one yet, but I
hey,
still have
that's
time. I still have
well,
time.
the
I
fact that
can
you
do it.
even started them though, that's great. Like
It's true.
I also have like so many passion projects that I've started and are in the process of making, but just haven't gotten to a good finishing point. So like the fact that you've started it and you're working toward releasing them, that's great.
Yeah, but so that's the stepping point. I just want to, because it's just the same things that we've been talking about, is that there's a really, really good chance that none of these 5 apps do absolutely anything. That's like far and away the most likely scenario. But if I ever want to have one be remotely successful, I probably need to get through those unsuccessful apps. I need to learn things, and I need to figure out, find out what does work, what doesn't work. And anyway, I think I get in my head too much about it, and I want to make a big splash, or I want people to like it, and I want, people to see it on social media or whatever it might be. But I just need to not worry about that so much. And if something crazy happens and it goes viral and gets a lot of press, like cool, awesome. Like that would be wild. But that doesn't need to be the expectation. Like you see people have that kind of success, and like I'm not going to say no to that if that opportunity came knocking.
When that happens, I feel like they're just like, oh yeah, we were just making something that we wanted to put see in the world, and then it just became something.
Totally. Yeah. It just is like right place, right time, or it just, how this person saw a problem and how they wanted to solve it just vibed really well with other people, and it just takes off. And so who knows? Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But the worst thing that can happen, releasing it, maybe nobody uses it, but it's the same result if I don't release it. So might as well try.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's everything that we were talking about, right? Like you got to take risks in order to learn and in order to make something that ends up being that kind of success that you want it to be. So,
Yep. So look out for my packing list app coming out soon.
hey, all right.
Very
I
exciting. It's
I
gonna
didn't
be
sign an NDA,
huge.
so don't tell me too much about it, but
No, nothing too crazy, but
well, yeah, you'll have to show me more about that, and hopefully some point I'll have you back on the podcast. You can tell me how it's all been going.
yeah, hopefully I have something to report.
Yeah, you better. I mean, it's your goal to have there better at least be one of those apps out on the App Store. Last thing I'll ask is, are you hiring for anyone who's listening?
Yes, actually we are. We aren't hiring for iOS developers, but we have 3 or 4 positions open for like data analysts and full stack engineers and things like that. So yeah, if you're interested, definitely reach out. We need some help.
How do they find how do people apply to those?
I'm sure it's on Crumble's careers website. I don't know that off the top of my head. Probably crumble.com/careers or something like that. But yeah, you can also, I don't know, find me on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. But yeah, yeah, reach out to me. I'm happy to pass your info along.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's Eric Schofield, everyone. Eric, thanks again for being on the podcast today. Always a good time to talk with you. It was really cool to learn more about your career journey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.